All right, so topic number one, inflation versus deflation. There's this argument from the Keynesians that inflation is necessary, inflation is good, and I just don't buy it anymore. I used to be a Keynesian. I was taught I went to school for economics. I had my degree in economics, and so I very much was taught this line that it's a good thing, that it's necessary. You need inflation, to stimulate the economy and all this and that. I don't buy it anymore. I think inflation is actually more destructive than good for a multitude of reasons. Mainly, number one is because it is controlled by a literal cabal, a conspiratorial group that has, over the years and decades, has consolidated power into the hands of a few. They control the currency, and they make us all pay for their decisions, for whatever actions they want to make. The programs they want to spend on, the infinite wars they want to fund, it's a big one. And just in everything else that is wrong with that. They make us pay for it directly through taxation because they have to offset the invention of new money somehow. And so they make us pay for that in the form of taxes. But even then, the debt grows and grows and grows every year because they can't tax us enough to cover the ridiculous bloated spending that they have every year. Mostly of which is funding infinite war and death across the planet, which does nobody any good, including us. I mean, obviously, it's really bad for anybody who's, at the end of the barrel for the wars that we fund. But it's also not good for us. We not only does it put a target on our back, but we have to pay for it via taxation. And then the other more insidious way in which we pay for it is inflation. Everybody sees, especially over the last couple of years, how prices on everything have gone up and up and up. Some of that is attributed to supply chain problems. Obviously, COVID played a role in that. And then, of course, also the Ukraine-Russia war played a role in that, disrupting the supply chains that were in place, and everything had sort of equilibrated to a point that made sense, or at least reflected an accurate market value. And then that all just went to hell, and then energy prices went up. And when energy prices go up, the cost of food goes up, the cost of everything else goes up because the input costs for all those devices or all those products or services goes up as well. We also see, in crazy pricing in real estate. This is a result of new money entering the market. Whenever somebody who is just so lucky enough, connected enough to be very close to or closest to the money faucet, the spigot of where new money is invented, the first thing they do with it is try and store that value. And the way that you store that value is you buy assets. And one of the most important assets in the world is real estate, because people need a roof over their head in order to live comfortably, at least. So that is one of the key factors is driving up real estate prices. This new money comes in and it buys up all the real estate. I mean, look at the real estate holdings of BlackRock and Fidelity and all these other gigantic, wealth fund management firms. They are just buying real estate ad nauseum because that's one of the only ways that you can really store the wealth and outpace inflation with the growth of that wealth. If you just hold dollars, tomorrow it's not going to be worth as much as it is today. So you chase assets. That's actually leads to the other point that's really bad with inflation. Your money on a fiat currency system, such as the dollar, is less valuable as time goes on. So it's a terrible store of value. And this creates an incentive and behavior structure where people try to put that money somewhere where it's going to at least outpace inflation. And you could look at inflation as the devaluation of your currency. It is the ever-ending, as it's been described, the melting ice cube. And that's exactly what happens. So when you have $100 today, well, a year from now, $100 is not going to be able to buy the same things a year from now that you can today. It's just not. And that's reflected in prices. We see prices going up. That's because the currency is becoming less valuable. There are more dollars in the market, more dollars in existence that are chasing the same or relatively the same amount of goods. And so when you have more dollars chasing these goods, the prices go up. So that does nobody any good, especially if you're on a fixed income. If you're retired, that especially hurts you there. If you're poor or young and you're just starting out, that really hurts you there as well. What you used to be able to buy in groceries, 6 months ago, now you can only get 3/4 of that, half of that, whatever the case may be. And that doesn't help you because you need more time to learn more skills, gain experience and work exposure, increase your networking ability, and move up in a company, make a career move, et cetera, et cetera. 6 months to a year, 2 years, sometimes just isn't enough time for that. And as prices continuously go up, it just makes it more and more difficult for you to climb up into the middle class, or into the upper middle class, or whatever your situation may be. It just makes upward mobility much more difficult. And that's what the American dream used to be. We used to have a hard money currency standard. And so, if you just worked hard and you saved your money, by the end of your life, your kids had it made, because of, in one generation, you could go from poverty to middle class. In one generation, you could go from middle class to upper class. It's just not possible anymore. And it's largely the result of inflation. Just terrible inflation and money printing and reckless spending by the government. So now, by contrast, if you were to have a deflationary asset, or if you were to have a deflationary currency, or a hard currency like Bitcoin, one where the schedule of units that are in existence is fixed. There's no fluctuation. There's no shock to the system. Like in COVID, there was this trillions dollar shock of currency just entering into the marketplace. There's no shock like that with a currency like Bitcoin. It is as stable can be. And what that does is increases the value of the currency over time. It increases. So what does that do to behavior and incentives? Number one, if your money that you hold today is going to be more valuable tomorrow and the next year and the following year, that incentivizes you to hold it, incentivizes you to save it. And so instead of spending today on wasteful, you're gonna spend it later. Like, for example, I'm gonna work, I'm gonna save, and then once I feel that the time is right, I'm then going to spend it on, say, a house or a car or some other asset that's gonna really improve the quality of my life. So that's number one. And then number two, imagine that you're earning in this currency. Okay, so in the fiat standard, we have something called sticky wages, which basically means that even as the prices of things go up and things become less affordable and people are unable to make ends meet, wages don't really keep up with that pace. They don't. They tend to just stay where they are. That's called sticky wages. They tend to stick, and it's sticky, and you can't really. It's really difficult to increase wages for people, and it doesn't matter if it's minimum wage or if it's a salaried employee at $80,000 a year. Even that person making $80,000 to $100,000 a year eventually is going to find themselves in a situation where it's like, I can no longer maintain the living standard, the quality of life that I was accustomed to, and my wages are not going up at least they're not going up at a rate to keep up with that. And so even people that are comfortably in the middle to upper middle class find themselves in and we're seeing videos like this every day. We're seeing reels on TikTok and on Instagram constantly of people going, what the F is going on? I can't even, I make $150,000 a year and I can't even afford XYZ. It's because of inflation. The opposite is true with deflation. Assuming that sticky wages is going to be the same scenario in a deflationary currency setting, that means that the money you earn every year is going to become more and more valuable. So what's going to happen, you'd have to have an employer come to you at some point and go, I need to decrease your wage. And like, how well is that going to go over? Not very well. It's going to be a very difficult pitch to make, And so the wages I feel are going to be at least as sticky as they are in the fiat standard. But in a hard money Bitcoin, for example, standard, it's going to be you're going to have the same stickiness. And so you're basically going to get a raise every year, even though you're making the same amount of currency in terms of units. And so what does that do? That increases your wealth. It increases your purchasing power. What you couldn't afford a year ago on the exact same wage today, you can now afford because the prices have gone down. The value of your currency has gone up. So this benefits the poor. This benefits the middle class. This benefits the elderly. This benefits the young. This benefits everybody, and even including the rich. Even the rich will benefit from this. It benefits everyone. The only thing that it might disrupt a bit is lending. And I made a reel about this. If you check out my channel, the question was, are people going to still lend their money on a Bitcoin standard? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. But what it's going to be is a more carefully thought out and less wasteful and more efficient lending system. Look at the lending system today on a fiat standard. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke, and it benefits almost nobody except the rich, except the people who already have a bunch of money and can accept the risk. But for anybody else, basically you're not even allowed to enter into the market of lending. On a Bitcoin standard, it opens the gates for a lot more people to lend. It's a lot more stringent because the currency is hard and it's extremely valuable. So it's no longer a situation where you can just borrow a bunch of money and then just, oops, the project didn't work, sorry. No, now it's going to be like, that money, that is worth something. That money is worth something. So we're going to come after you. And also, by the way, we're not going to lend to you unless we know absolutely for sure that this is a good idea and that we want to pursue this. So no more wasteful lending, I think one of the big benefits from this is that the banking and lending industry is really going to shrink. It's going to really contract a lot. There's so much garbage lending out there today, payday loans and all this other bullshit. All that's going to go away. And that's going to be good for everybody because the morality of a society is directly proportional to the morality of a money.